Welcome to Grimdark Shards, your portal to the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war. Tonight we unveil Blood and Faith, a saga of desperate zeal and relentless bloodshed on a world at its breaking point. In the smoke-choked halls of a dying shrine, the faithful make their stand against unspeakable horror. The brave Grey Knights saw omens of a great slaughter committed by the World Eaters in the name of Khorne. Before we plunge into this abyss, heed the call to support our crusade. Like this chronicle if it pleases the Emperor, and join our ranks by subscribing to stand beside us in future battles. Strike the bell of notification with the fury of a righteous warrior, so you never miss the next saga from our archives. Speak up as well, Shardwalker. Comment below with your thoughts, for your words are as valued as scripture in this librarium. Our war effort is sustained by more than faith alone. Should you wish to bolster our cause, the machine spirits have blessed us with a potent elixir. Use code SHARDS at G Fuel for a 20% discount and boost your own provisions, or offer a small tithe to our war chest through Ko-fi to keep the torches of this archive burning bright. Their supporters will also find data slates containing the material of our latest tales. Support is appreciated, not mandated. Find the links in the archives below. The hour is late and the battle beckons. Steel yourself once more, Shardwalker. By the Emperor's will, let the tale of blood and faith commence. Night had fallen in a pall of scarlet over Sanctum Heredicia, the grand cathedral-city of Karthago Prime. Once a sacred shrine world of the ecclesiarchy, its spires now burned like candles in the darkness. Brother Captain Ignatius would later record that an unnatural red glow shrouded the skies, but for the souls on the ground, this was the end of the world. Confessor Manuel stiffened as another distant explosion shook dust from the vaulted ceiling. By flickering candlelight, the aged priest gazed up at the towering statue of the God Emperor that loomed above the altar. "Deliver us," he whispered tremulously, clutching the silver aquila on his breast. Outside the cathedral's reinforced doors echoed the cacophony of chainswords and hysterical screams. The heretics had come. The frenzied chant of "Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne" resounded through stone corridors, each repetition drenched in rage and bloodlust. Within the sacred nave, a dozen remaining Planetary Defense Force soldiers stood trembling behind overturned pews, lasguns trained on the ancient doors. They were the last dregs of resistance, wide-eyed, bleeding, reeking of fear. The butchery outside had been absolute. Karthago's streets were slick with gore. Piles of severed heads and mangled corpses lined the plaza, arranged in obscene altars to the blood god Khorne. Sergeant Stavros, a veteran of countless firefights, felt his gut churn at the inhuman howls beyond the threshold. He had heard rumors of what approached. Warriors in crimson armor, once human perhaps, now nothing but mad berserkers driven by an insatiable rage. The butcher's nails implanted in their brains had long since stripped away fear, pain, and remorse, leaving only a lust for slaughter. Stavros muttered a half-remembered prayer, sweat mixing with the blood on his face. A thunderous impact rattled the barred doors. The great plasteel gates buckled as something on the far side pounded again, each strike stronger than the last. Whispers of dread flickered through the defenders. One trooper whimpered, making the sign of the aquila. The confessor raised his voice, attempting a hymn. "The Emperor is our shield and protector," but his quavering tones were drowned by a bellowing war cry beyond the doors. A voice so deep and savage it froze every listener's blood, followed by manic, inhuman laughter. With a final deafening crash, the cathedral doors burst open in a hail of splinters. The first invader charged through, a towering Chaos Space Marine, in baroque red plate, trimmed in brass, his helm fashioned into a snarling demon visage. Dried gore encrusted his spiked armor. He wielded a roaring chain axe and a heavy pistol the size of a man's torso. For an eternal heartbeat, the defenders stared in numb horror at this apparition of war. The World-Eater Berserker's eye lenses glowed with hateful glee. Then with a guttural snarl, he hurled himself forward. "Open fire!" Stavros screamed. Las bolts crisscrossed the nave, striking sparks off the giant's armor. More red-armored giants barged in behind the first, a whole squad of them. They moved with terrifying speed for their size. Gunfire was answered with explosive rounds. The newcomers' bolt pistols barked, and guardsmen exploded into red mist. One berserker cleaved through a pew, bisecting the terrified trooper cowering behind it. Another grabbed a fleeing soldier and smashed him bodily into a marble pillar, leaving a crimson smear. Over the carnage rose their laughter and the grinding snarl of chain weapons. The defenders were being torn apart like parchment. Confessor Manuel fell to his knees behind the altar, eyes shut, reciting, "Emperor protect us, Emperor protect us," as chaos raged. Sergeant Stavros emptied his last magazine into the lead berserker at point-blank range. The hulking traitor didn't even falter. A gauntleted hand backhanded the sergeant with bone-crushing force, sending him crashing to the floor in a heap of shattered armor and limbs. Stavros coughed blood, vision blurring. The berserker loomed over him and slowly raised his chain axe for the killing blow, engine revving hungrily. In that instant, a new sound cut through the blood-soaked haze, the staccato roar of a storm bolter firing on full auto. Mass reactive rounds shrieked across the nave. The crimson-armored warrior above Stavros jolted as detonations stitched across his chest and helm. With a furious snarl, the berserker staggered back, ichor spraying from ruptured ceramite. Stavros blinked in disbelief. From the smoke-filled gloom at the shattered doorway strode forth an armored figure wreathed in silver light. He was clad in ornate aegis armor of burnished grey, etched with arcane wards and the Imperial Aquila. A blood-red tabard, emblazoned with a holy sigil, hung from his waist. In his left gauntlet was mounted a smoking storm bolter of exquisite craftsmanship, and in his right hand he bore a massive halberd-like blade crackling with blue psychic energy. The helm's visor burned a fierce white. Flanking him were more warriors in the same gleaming plate, weapons at the ready. They moved with preternatural grace and discipline, each formation step measured and purposeful, even amid the swirling bloodshed. Stavros's fading sight focused on a symbol embossed on the newcomer's pauldrons, a sword atop a book. In that moment, delirious and dying, Stavros realized the Emperor's angels had come. They had answered Karthago Prime's cries. The berserkers howled in inarticulate rage at this new challenge.
"We are the hammer,"
the lead Grey Knight's voice boomed, amplified by his helm's voxcaster. He and his brethren stepped forward as one, fearless against the tide of madness. Over the broken body of Sergeant Stavros, the Emperor's knights clashed with Khorne's chosen. Faith met fury, silver met blood, and for the first time that night on doomed Karthago, hope, however grim, was rekindled. Brother Captain Ignatius advanced through the cathedral's sundered doors, storm bolter raised. Bolt after bolt leapt from his wrist-mounted gun, each round finding the screaming traitors with unerring wrath. A cornade berserker barreled toward him, swinging a chain axe overhead. But Ignatius's will was iron. He spoke a single word of banishment under his breath, a fragment of the secret lexicon known only to the chapter, and the sound resonated like a bell of doom. The berserker faltered, dazed by the holy utterance, and in that heartbeat Ignatius struck. His nemesis force halberd carved a glittering arc and cleaved the traitor from collarbone to hip, banishing the heretic's furious soul to whatever hell awaited it. 2 more lunged at him. He fired point blank, bolts detonating inside their torsos and blowing them apart in showers of meat and ceramite. The few surviving berserkers reeled back, their bloodthirst momentarily checked by the sudden ferocity of the defense. In seconds, it was over. The last howling World Eater fell silent, his head removed by Justicar Marcus's crackling force sword. Silence reclaimed the holy place, broken only by the drip of blood from shattered pews. The Grey Knights stood in a loose circle amid the carnage, vigilant for any further threats. Their silver armor was spattered with the viscera of the foe, but none of them had fallen. They were trained for this, bred for this, the pinnacle of the Emperor's warriors, immune to fear or corruption. Ignatius surveyed the nave, heart heavy despite the adrenaline of combat. Piles of eviscerated faithful lay strewn across the floor, painting the marble flagstones red. The stench of blood and ozone hung thick. Through his autosenses, he felt the psychic miasma clinging to the place, a haze of rage and despair that threatened to seep into the soul. Ordinary men would have been driven mad by it, but the Grey Knight's mental wards held firm. Each of them quietly intoned the litany of purity through helmet speakers, bolstering their souls against the warp's touch. Though my flesh may fail, I fear not, for his light fills me. No demon may pierce my faith. They chanted in unison, the words calming and cold. Brother Sergeant Gallon approached Ignatius and gave a curt nod.
Area secure, Brother Captain.
His voice was level, as if they had merely finished a routine training exercise. Ignatius acknowledged him, then moved to kneel by the fallen confessor, Manuel. The old priest was miraculously still alive, huddled behind the altar, eyes shut tight. Ignatius gently placed a massive gauntlet on the man's shoulder.
Father, the enemy is defeated here,
The Grey Knight said softly, his tone measured and authoritative. The confessor opened his eyes, beholding the towering armored giant haloed by the altar's candlelight. For a moment, Manuel thought a silver-armored saint had emerged from the God Emperor's own tapestry. Before the priest could speak, Ignatius's helm snapped up. Through the open doorway of the cathedral, distant gunfire and screams still echoed from elsewhere in the city. The battle for Karthago Prime was far from over. How many had already been butchered? A brief spark of sorrow flitted through Ignatius's heart at the wanton loss of innocent life. But he extinguished it. Sorrow was a luxury. He and his squad had a mission to complete amidst this hellish scene, and nothing could distract them.
Brother Captain,
voxed Justicar Marcus from the transept.
I sense it too.
Ignatius felt it. A tug in the warp, a pulse of malevolent energy somewhere ahead in the city's depths. Being powerful psychers, each Grey Knight's mind was finely attuned to disturbances in the immaterium. Now an oppressive sensation pressed on their consciousness, the psychic spore of countless murders committed in Khorne's name. Something was gathering strength from this bloodshed. Ignatius closed his eyes behind his visor and let his psychic senses unfurl. Almost immediately, he recoiled slightly. He had touched a current of pure rage beyond the cathedral, raw and growing. The veil between reality and the warp was thinning with every drop of blood spilled. Demons would soon swarm unless they intervened.
Form up. We move on the source of this warp breach,
Ignatius ordered.
Our target lies at the heart of the city.
He knew where it would be. The Basilica of St. Venerator, Karthago's central cathedral, and the largest concentration of slaughter if the pattern held. The World Eater's warband had struck like a spear into the city's holy center, desecrating every shrine along the way. Likely their lord intended a grand offering to Khorne there, perhaps even to summon a greater demon. It was a blasphemy the Grey Knights would not allow. His brothers responded immediately. Justicar Marcus barked concise commands, and the squad reformed into a tight phalanx. 6 Grey Knights in total remained unhurt and battle-ready, marching in lockstep with bolters raised. Brother Sergeant Galan hefted an incinerator, a sacred flamethrower, its pilot light casting a blue glow on his pauldron. Brother Aeon carried a heavy psy-cannon, the runes along its barrel glowing faintly as it charged. Each warrior checked his nemesis weapon, its psychic circuitry attuned to its wielder's soul alone. They would need every weapon in their arsenal for what was to come. Ignatius turned one last time to the stunned confessor. The old man stared at them in awe. Ignatius felt a pang of compassion for this faithful servant of the Emperor, but he could not tarry.
Shelter here, Father. Pray for deliverance,
the brother captain intoned. His voice echoed through the helm, gentle yet alien. Then quieter.
And if any survive this night, Emperor, forgive me.
The confessor did not understand those final words, but he nodded shakily, reaching out to touch the grey armored knee of the giant in thanks. Ignatius was already moving, focus forward. The Grey Knights strode out into the burning streets of the city. Fires raged in every direction, casting everything in dancing hues of orange and red. The air was thick with ash and the coppery tang of spilt blood. Distant explosions thudded. Somewhere a guttural chant in dark tongue was being carried by vox amplifiers. It was a literal hell on earth. But these warriors of Titan had been trained on Titan's moon and beyond, amidst the worst horrors of the warp. This would not shake them. They advanced down a shattered boulevard, littered with shattered statues of imperial saints. Headless corpses of civilians lay scattered like discarded dolls. Many had died fleeing. Others had been dragged and arranged in grisly displays. Brother Galen paused to quietly recite rites of passage for some of the dead, gently closing a child's glazed eyes. Their secrecy often meant they could not be known as saviors, but each Grey Knight still harbored the duty of care for the Emperor's flock. Ignatius allowed him the brief moment. Such human gestures kept the flame of purpose alive in their gene-crafted hearts. Justicar Marcus's gauntlet clenched as he surveyed a heap of butchered PDF soldiers.
Mad butchery,
he hissed, the normally unflappable knight betraying a hint of anger. Indeed, the poor souls did not stand a chance against the butchers that came for them. Khorne cares not whence the blood flows, only that it does. Ignatius thought of that profane saying with distaste.
Steady, brother,
Ignatius cautioned.
Rage is their weapon. It will not cloud our judgment.
Marcus dipped his helm in acknowledgement, recentering himself with a murmured prayer. The Grey Knights knew well the perils of emotion. Even righteous fury could be a door for chaos. They would not allow it. Their minds and purpose were as one, honed to a razor's edge. At a silent signal, Brother Aeon moved ahead, his psy-cannon swiveling. The street narrowed as they approached a wrecked hab block, and Ignatius sensed life forms inside, likely survivors or hidden cultists. A quick thermal scan confirmed multiple bodies huddled in the ruins. The knights approached cautiously. Without warning, stubber rounds pattered off Ignatius's cuirass. A ragged band of cultists, faces painted with blood runes, leapt from cover, screaming praises to Khorne. They unleashed wild lasfire and autogun bursts that pattered uselessly against the Grey Knights' sanctified power armor. Pitiful.
Purge them,
Ignatius said coldly. Galen stepped forth, leveling the barrel of the incinerator. With a whoosh, a torrent of blessed promethium gushed out, engulfing the cultists in a holy conflagration. Their screams turned to shrill wails as purifying flame consumed them. In seconds, the heretics were charred silhouettes slumping to ash. A few civilians hiding deeper in the rubble peeked out with terrified eyes at the silver-armored giants who had incinerated their tormentors. Ignatius's helm turned toward them briefly. He could sense their fear of him as much as of the cultists. They had likely never seen an Astartes, much less a Grey Knight, and after tonight they never would again. His lips tightened as he remembered the edicts. No witnesses could be allowed to recall the chapter's presence, but that grim task would come later. For now, the best mercy he could offer was to eliminate the threat. "Thank you," a frail voice whimpered from a woman clutching a child among the survivors. Ignatius gave a slow nod.
Remain hidden. The Emperor's wrath is here.
That was all he could spare. He motioned and the squad moved on, leaving the stunned survivors in the glow of fires. None of the Grey Knights mentioned aloud what fate might befall those innocents once the battle was done. The Inquisition's containment protocols were clear. But each knight silently renewed his vow that such necessary evils too would be on his soul if it meant shielding humanity from corruption. As they pressed deeper towards St. Venerator's Plaza, the signs of battle intensified. Craters from artillery and demolished vehicles littered the approach. The Grey Knights passed the smoking husk of a Lehman Russ battle tank, its hull rent open as if by monstrous claws. Ignatius's autosenses caught residual traces of warp energy around the wreck.
Demon.
He spoke the warning across the psychic link the squad shared. Immediately the others tightened formation, weapons primed. If the World Eaters had unleashed demons already, time was even shorter than expected. Almost on cue, a feral roar echoed from a side avenue. A blur of brass and flesh hurtled out from behind a collapsed wall. A snarling flesh-hound of Khorne, one of the blood god's demonic hunting beasts. It charged on all fours, eyes burning, its collar of brass spikes glinting, a collar of Khorne, protecting it from psyker trickery. Brother Aeon swung his psi cannon toward it, but Ignatius held out a hand.
Mine.
The captain planted his feet and raised his left palm, channeling his will. A shimmering symbol of banishment glowed briefly in the air. The flesh-hound leapt, and Ignatius unleashed a bolt of psychic force that struck the beast mid-air. Even the collar could not fully stop the raw kinetic blast. The creature was smashed aside, yelping as it crashed to the ground. Before it could recover, Ignatius was upon it. He drove his halberd down, impaling the thrashing hound to the earth. The daemon's form destabilized with an agonized howl. With a final snarl of spite, it and its coveted collar dissolved into sizzling blood, and then to ash, banished back into the immaterium from whence it came. The Grey Knights pressed on, undaunted. Their psi link crackled with brief exchanges. Brother Aeon reporting no further hounds on Auspex. Justica Marcus sensing the warp taint growing stronger with each block. The very shadows seemed to coil with hate now. Ignatius felt an oppressive heat in the air. An unnatural furnace-like aura emanated from the central plaza ahead. He signaled an approach via a half-collapsed administratum building overlooking the square. Best to assess the situation before charging in. The knights moved with surprising stealth for their size, spirits bolstered by resolve. Each silently mouthed the Emperor's prayer as they took up positions in the shattered upper floor of the building, gazing down at the plaza of St. Venerator. What they saw tested even their hardened souls. Below sprawled a scene of carnage, worthy of a nightmare. The grand plaza, once a holy market ground, was awash in gore. Piles of decapitated bodies had been heaped into pyramids. A fountain at the center overflowed with blood instead of water. its pumps staining the cobblestones crimson. Dozens of armored World Eaters milled about in frenzied excitement, many still hacking apart corpses or fighting amongst themselves for sheer bloodlust. Their mad howl, "Blood for the blood god," echoed as a continuous din. In the center, atop the steps of St. Venerator's great cathedral, a massive brass icon of Khorne had been erected. Impaled on its spikes were the remains of the city's clergy, forming a grisly halo of entrails around the symbol. But most alarming of all was what transpired at the foot of that blasphemous idol. 8 World Eaters, each in heavy Baroque armor and helms marked with horned visages, slaughtered hopelessly outmatched soldiers, spilling their life's blood into the pit. Their screams gurgled out and died as they fell to the blood sport and added to the pool of blood and gore. A thick, cloying fog rose from that pit, the veil thinning with every soldier mauled. Ignatius realized this was what the Emperor's tarot had foretold. They were using the insane scale of slaughter to tear open reality and summon something truly monstrous. On the cathedral's broken facade, a lone figure watched the carnage below. Clearly the leader. Kratos, Ignatius realized, recognizing the infamous World Eater champion from Ordo Malleus dossiers. The warband's leader towered even above his berserker brethren, clad in ancient Terminator armor painted blood red and brass. A cape of flayed skin fluttered from his shoulders. He gripped a massive chain axe in one hand and a demon-forged mace in the other. Both weapons dripped gore. His helmet was removed, revealing a snarling, scarred face with eyes as black as a shark's. Numerous cybernetic plugs riddled his skull. Visible evidence of the butcher's nails hammered into his brain. Kratos' whole body quivered with barely restrained violence. Ignatius needed no psychic touch to read the situation. The champion was eagerly awaiting the slaughter's climax, craving the moment a greater demon might emerge so he could revel in the bloodshed alongside it, or perhaps even hoping to earn Khorne's favor. Maybe even ascension, if this offering pleased his dark god. Time was perilously short. Ignatius voxed to his squad.
We strike now. By the numbers, purge the heretics, stop the summoning. A greater demon must not manifest.
Each Grey Knight affirmed with a click of the vox. They all knew what was at stake. If a bloodthirster or similar demon fully materialized, it could rampage beyond this world. Better this entire city be reduced to ash than let that happen, if it came to it. But first they would try steel and faith. Silently, the 6 Grey Knights spread out along the ruin's edge to secure fields of fire. Ignatius would lead the frontal assault down the main avenue, drawing the brunt of the enemy's fury. Justica Marcus and Brother Galen would flank from the left with incinerator and blades, while Aeon and the others provided covering fire from high vantage points, Psy Cannon and Storm Bolters ready to reap a heavy toll. It was a tactic born of countless demon hunts. Strike hard, sow confusion, isolate the leader. Ignatius whispered a final litany.
Emperor, let our aim be true, our faith unbroken.
He raised his Nemesis Force halberd, a crackle of blue psychic power running along its blade. Across the plaza, as if sensing the impending reckoning, Kratos' black eyes narrowed. The Khornate warlords sniffed at the acrid night air like a hunting hound. Could he scent their psychic presence? It was too late for him regardless. Ignatius ignited his jump pack, a flare of blue flame, and hurled himself from the shattered upper wall, landing in the plaza with the force of a thunderbolt. The flagstones cratered under his armored bulk. Immediately, a half-dozen bolt guns from the surrounding traitors swung toward the impact point.
By the Emperor, purge the blasphemers,
Ignatius roared, leveling his storm bolter. The Grey Knights struck as one. From their overlook, Brother Aeon and two brethren opened fire, picking off World Eaters with disciplined bursts. Storm bolter shells whizzed in, punching through power armor. One berserker's head vanished in a pink mist as a Psy-cannon round found its mark. On the left flank, Marcus and Galen sprinted out from cover, the latter's incinerator belching cleansing flame. A cone of azure fire washed over 3 traitors who had been scrambling for cover. They collapsed, howling, as holy promethium ate into corrupted flesh like acid. The plaza erupted into chaos. The World Eaters, startled from their grisly bloodletting, answered with bellows of rage and a stutter of bolter fire. Explosive rounds whined past Ignatius as he charged straight for the blood pit at the plaza's center, shrugging off glancing hits against his Aegis-blessed armor. A berserker barreled into his path, revving twin chain axes to bar the brother captain's advance. Ignatius plowed into the traitor, the impact like a freight train. Enhanced by power armor and psychic might, the Grey Knight sent the foe sprawling. Before the fallen berserker could recover, Ignatius stamped down with one boot, crushing the heretic's helm and the skull within. With a grisly crunch, Justica Marcus parried a screaming chainblade with his own nemesis sword, sparks flying. The frenzied traitor bore down, strength amplified by insane fury. Marcus responded with honed precision. He riposted, shearing through the berserker's wrist, then reversed grip and drove his blade through the enemy's heart. Even impaled, the World Eater still tried to lunge forward, attempting to headbutt with froth spilling from his helmet grill. Such was Khorne's hold that pain meant nothing. Marcus murmured a prayer and pumped 3 storm bolter rounds into the warrior's chest. Finally, the thrashing heretic fell limp. Elsewhere, Brother Galen found himself trading blows with an axe-wielding brute nearly a head taller than him. The berserker slammed his chain axe onto Galen's left pauldron, carving a furrow in the ceramite and biting into the flesh beneath. Galen grunted, feeling warm blood trickle inside his armor. But he used the moment of closeness to his advantage. Snapping out his free hand, he pressed an armored palm against the traitor's helmet and intoned,
Dominatus.
A pulse of psychic domination flooded the berserker's crude mind. For just an instant, the heretic's muscles froze as if paralyzed, and that was all Galen needed. He tore the chain axe from the warrior's grip, and with a snarl, slammed it back into its owner's neck. The berserker's head half detached in a spray of ichor. Galen kicked the corpse away, yanking the chain axe free. Above, Brother Aeon coolly lined up another shot. His Psy-cannon hummed and spat a tungsten core bolt wreathed in psychic force. The blessed projectile streaked across the plaza and struck a World Eater who was sprinting toward Ignatius with a crackling power sword. The round detonated in a flash of warp energy, blowing the traitor's torso apart. Gore rained down on the blood-slick stones. Aeon allowed himself a grim smile, which faded as his sensor rune pinged a warning. 2 blips. Behind. Suddenly the ruined building around him trembled. With a deafening crash, the wall behind Aeon exploded inward. 2 massive figures in cataphracti Terminator armor barged through the rubble. Red Butchers, the frenzied shock troops of the World Eaters. These were warriors so far gone to the nails that they were kept in chains between battles, unleashed only at the bloodiest moments. Their armor was scarred and painted with fresh gore, and each wielded a pair of oversized lightning claws crackling with disruptive energy. They must have flanked around undetected amid the carnage. Aeon had only a split second to act. He dropped the heavy Psy-cannon and drew his nemesis warding stave, channeling psychic power into its head. The first Red Butcher swiped at him, claws shearing the air. Aeon blocked with the stave, the impact discharging a crack of lightning. The force of the blow knocked him to one knee, servos whining. The Terminator growled and slammed down again. The stave's wards flared as the claws scraped closer to Aeon's helmet. He braced, straining every gene-enhanced muscle to hold the killer back. At the last moment, Brother Tancred, one of the knights providing cover, hurled himself into the fray, chainsword buzzing. Tancred intercepted the second Red Butcher, deflecting a strike that would have gutted Aeon from the side. "Go, brother, I'll hold them," Tancred voxed, voice tight with exertion. Aeon hesitated. 2 Red Butchers were more than a match even for 1 Grey Knight apiece. But there was no time to argue. Aeon gave a quick nod and pulled back, leaping down from the ruin to rejoin the others converging on the plaza's center. Behind him, Tancred fought with skilled fury, his sword dancing to keep the dual berserkers at bay. The butcher's roars and the shriek of tearing metal echoed as Aeon sprinted to support Ignatius. The brother captain had reached the pit, the focal point of the enemy's unholy plan. Kratos watched the battle unfold from the cathedral steps with a growing grin, revealing iron teeth. This was the worthy fight he had craved. The corpse gods' lapdogs, here in the flesh. Grey Knights, no less. Psychers and demon hunters, an affront to Khorne's creed. His blood boiled in anticipation when the silver-armored leader cut through his retinue and made for the blood pit. Kratos knew the time had come to face him.
"Come, little knight. Come to your death."
Kratos growled under his breath. He hefted his massive chain axe, nicknamed Gorefather, in profane homage to Angron's own weapon, and leapt down the steps with an earth-shaking crash. Behind him, the Terminator-armored heretics attending the pit did not cease their bloody work. Kratos had ordered them to continue the slaughter until the summoning was complete, no matter what. Their deep voices bellowed oaths to Khorne, even as bolts and flames tore through the air around them. The blood in the pit was beginning to bubble and boil, an unnatural light gleaming from within. Ignatius saw the glow in the gore-filled crater, and a remaining terrified PDF soldier at its edge, pitted against a particularly massive berserker. The slaughter was moments from completion. Summoning his will, Ignatius extended a gauntlet toward the pit and cried out a wrathful psychic command.
"Begone."
A kinetic shockwave rippled forth. It threw nearby World Eaters off their feet and disrupted the enemy's formation momentarily. One of the Terminators staggered, a snarl of pain erupting from him as the mind blast ravaged his senses. The young PDF soldier scrambled away on instinct. Ignatius surged forward to capitalize, but a red shadow loomed, intercepting him. Kratos charged into the Grey Knight's path, chain axe howling. Ignatius barely brought up his halberd in time. Axe teeth met the blessed blade in a shower of sparks. The sheer power behind Kratos' strike sent Ignatius skidding back a step, armored boots gouging the blood-slick stones. The Khornate champion was immense up close, nearly the size of a Terminator himself, and he reeked of the warp. Ignatius could feel the hate radiating from him, like heat from a furnace.
"You face judgment, traitor,"
Ignatius spat, steadying his weapon. Kratos laughed, a harsh, guttural sound.
"Judgment? I am the herald of Khorne's judgment, whelp."
He snarled, voice amazingly loud without any vox amplification.
"You think yourself pure? I smell the witchery on you, psycho filth."
He punctuated the last word with another brutal swing aimed at Ignatius's helm. The brother captain ducked, the air crackling as the chain axe blade whooshed past. Ignatius countered with a swift thrust of his halberd, psychic energy flaring along the blade as he aimed for Kratos' abdomen. In a lightning display of reflexes, Kratos unexpectedly caught the shaft of the halberd in his offhand. The daemon mace in that fist twisted, locking the weapon in place. For a second, the two adversaries strained in deadlock face to face. Ignatius gritted his teeth behind his visor. The strength of this heretic was monstrous, bolstered by unnatural gifts. Up close, he noticed Kratos' eyes were actually bleeding from the corners, fresh rivulets of blood from the eternal agony of the nails. Yet the warlord seemed to feel nothing but dark joy.
I will grind your skull to dust and offer your gene seed to the Lord of Battle,
Kratos hissed, spraying spittle. Ignatius answered by channeling a pulse of psychic force down the length of his halberd. Lightning arced into Kratos' armor with a crackling snap. Kratos roared in pain as the blessed energy seared him, but to Ignatius' shock, the psychic attack suddenly fizzled, absorbed by some charm around the World Eater's neck. Hanging there was a spiked brass collar, engraved with blasphemous runes, a collar of corn forged from the blood god's hatred of sorcery. It glowed malevolently, having drunk in the psychic energy. Kratos grinned at Ignatius' momentary surprise, and then smashed his forehead into the Grey Knight's helmet with a sickening crack. The headbutt rang Ignatius' skull like a gong and sent him reeling back, vision sparking. Now Kratos pressed the attack, swinging his chain axe and mace in tandem. Ignatius parried desperately, his arms shuddering under the relentless blows. Each strike he blocked sent shockwaves through his augmetic bones. Yet Kratos fought with a measure of skill despite his berserk fury, a method to his savagery honed by centuries of warfare. Ignatius realized this opponent was unlike the mindless demons or frothing cultists he'd faced before. Kratos was a true champion of chaos, blessed by Khorne himself, perhaps even on the cusp of ascending further through Khorne's ranks, if tonight's slaughter pleased that dark god. All around them, the battle raged on. Several Grey Knights bore wounds now. Brother Galen bled from the gash in his shoulder, but still unleashed gouts of cleansing flame, keeping a knot of World Eaters at bay near the plaza's edge. Justicar Marcus had taken a glancing bolt round to his thigh, but he fought on, dueling two enemies at once with measured strikes. Brother Aeon rejoined him, blasting one traitor apart with his recharged Psy-cannon, then impaling a second with his stave. The numbers of the traitors were thinning, but every passing second cost the knights dearly, and brought the warp's breach closer to fully opening. At the blood-soaked pit, 3 Terminators still stood their ground, intent on completing the unholy slaughter. The air above the pit shimmered with a crimson haze, and a deep, monstrous growl echoed from within. The demon on the other side was already pushing against the veil into real space. Suddenly, one of the Terminators faltered, clutching at a fist-sized hole that appeared in his chest, courtesy of Brother Aeon's perfectly placed Psy-cannon shot. The giant toppled with a crash, ichor spraying from the rent in his armor. Only 2 remained. Ignatius knew they were out of time. Blocking a furious flurry of blows from Kratos, he risked a glance over the Chaos Champion's shoulder. The slaughter was nearly complete. Only a few deaths remained, and the last 2 Terminators were moving to ensure the Blood God would be pleased. Indeed, one heavily armored traitor had seized a guardsman by the throat and was raising a blade to finish him off. With a burst of resolve, Ignatius broke away from Kratos, twisting around him. He fired his jump pack for a split second, blasting himself backward a dozen paces and out of the Chaos Champion's immediate reach. Kratos howled in frustration at losing his prey. Ignatius landed closer to the pit, directly between the remaining Terminators. Extending his left arm, he unleashed a storm of bolts at the executioner. Mass reactive rounds tore into the traitor's knee joints, blowing out servos. The massive heretic crumpled with a distorted roar, dropping the guardsman. Before the other Terminator could react, Ignatius drew upon one of the most potent weapons in a Grey Knight's arsenal, the true name of the demon they sought to banish. Through dire prophecy and the secret librarius, Ignatius had learned a fragment of the fiend's true name in advance. It was a desperate gambit. Using such knowledge strained the soul, but now or never. He began to chant in High Gothic, each syllable measured and resonant.
In the name of the God Emperor of mankind, by thy true name, I bind thee and expel thee.
His voice took on an otherworldly timbre, echoing with psychic authority. The effect was immediate. The partially manifested bloodthirster beyond the portal recoiled. The pool of blood churned violently. The remaining Terminator, poised to continue the slaughter, faltered, clutching at his helmet as if stricken by an unbearable psychic screech. Ignatius continued relentlessly, forcing out forbidden syllables that no mortal tongue was meant to utter. Each word was like a dagger stabbing into reality's veil.
No blood shall give you purchase here, creature. Begone!
Ignatius bellowed, completing the incantation with a final thunderous command. The warp portal above the pit shrieked and then imploded with a teeth-rattling thunderclap. A hurricane of scorched blood and screaming warp energy exploded outward, hurling debris and bodies aside. The bloodthirster's half-formed claw, which had begun to emerge into the plaza, instantly disintegrated. A bellow of pure rage echoed and then faded to nothing as the connection was severed. The summoning was thwarted at the final moment. Brother Captain Ignatius staggered, nearly dropping to one knee as the psychic recoil washed over him. His vision swam. Even speaking a fragment of a demon's true name exacted a toll on the mind and soul. But he saw at once that the portal was gone. They had succeeded in their primary objective. The surviving sacrificial victim lay dazed but alive at the edge of the now empty pit of blood. A furious howl drew Ignatius's attention back to Kratos. The Cornade champion stood atop a heap of rubble, witnessing his grand offering denied. His eyes were wide with disbelief and unhinged fury. All his butchery, all his plans, stolen at the final heartbeat by these accursed knights.
No! You dare!
Kratos' voice was raw with outrage, almost cracking.
You deny Gorn his prize!
He raised both weapons and charged Ignatius with reckless abandon, caring nothing for defense now. Ignatius, strained from the banishment and regaining his balance, barely got his halberd up as Kratos crashed into him like a living juggernaut. They fell in a heap, the berserker champion hammering punches and smashing his weapons down onto the Grey Knight's armor. A mace blow glanced off Ignatius's helmet, cracking the ceramite and sending stars across his vision. The brother captain felt warm blood trickling down his face inside his helm. Kratos roared and seized Ignatius by the gorget, hauling the armored warrior up and then slamming him bodily onto the ground, knocking the wind from his lungs. Nearby, Justicar Marcus had just dispatched another foe. Seeing his commander in mortal peril, Marcus immediately rushed toward Kratos' exposed flank. He charged, swinging his force sword in a deadly horizontal arc toward Kratos' neck. It was a noble attempt, but Kratos was no mere frothing brute. His centuries of battle had honed his instincts razor sharp. At the last split second, Kratos twisted, taking the blow on his shoulder pauldron instead of the throat. Marcus's sword bit deep into the thick armor, wedging itself in the ceramite, but it wasn't a killing strike. Snarling, Kratos lashed out with his chain axe, the whirring teeth catching Justicar Marcus across the midsection. The chain blade chewed through the knight's breastplate, ripping a horrific wound across his torso. Marcus gasped in agony and crumpled to his knees, blood gushing from the ragged gash in his armor. With a backhand swing of his mace, Kratos smashed the stricken Justicar aside like a rag doll, then turned back to finish Ignatius once and for all. The brother captain surged up from the ground with a last burst of strength, driving the tip of his halberd under Kratos' raised arm. Blessed blade met corrupt flesh. Ignatius felt the weapon punch through a weak seam in the armor and sink deep into Kratos' side. The champion bellowed, an eruption of black blood gushing from the wound, but still he did not fall. With almost insane resilience, Kratos dropped his chain axe and grabbed the haft of the halberd impaling him. Howling a blood-maddened curse, he pulled himself further onto the blade, dragging himself closer to Ignatius, even as the weapon cleaved through his innards. Now, face to face, Kratos wrapped a massive gauntlet around the Grey Knight's throat. The pressure was immense. Ignatius's vision dimmed as the ceramite began to crack under the strain. Kratos lifted his mace high with his other hand, preparing a final crushing blow to Ignatius's skull.
Blood for the Blood God!
He roared triumphantly, hate and zealous fury blazing in his eyes. Ignatius could not pry himself free of the choking grip. He managed a final silent prayer to the Emperor, and then an apparition of silver slammed into Kratos from the side. It was Brother Sergeant Galen, grievously wounded, armor rent and leaking blood, but unyielding in faith. He had hurled himself at Kratos. The daemon mace raised to end Ignatius now adepted its path, while the iron grip on the brother captain remained. It crunched down on Galen's left shoulder and breastplate. The noble Grey Knight let out a pained grunt as the blow shattered his pauldron and collarbone, but he did not falter. With his last ounce of strength, Galen drove his short nemesis blade up under Kratos' chin, piercing through throat and spine. At the same instant, Ignatius mustered a final surge of will and tore his halberd out sideways from Kratos' torso, nearly cleaving the Cornade champion in half at the waist. Caught between the two mortal blows, even the mighty Kratos could fight no longer. His crushing grip slackened from Ignatius' throat. The traitor gurgled wetly, black blood pouring from his mouth, finally releasing Ignatius. Kratos dropped to his knees, his immense form sagging. His vision dimming, he used his last rattling breath to snarl in defiance.
Gorn cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows.
A gruesome grin of pride seemed to cross his ruined face. With that, the infamous warlord of the Bloodstorm warband toppled over, lifeless at last. Ignatius gasped for air, wrenching off his cracked helmet and sucking in the sooty, blood-tinged night. Brother Galen collapsed at his feet, mortally injured. Ignatius knelt and caught his brother in his arms. Galen's lifeblood was pouring from the shattered remains of his armor. Damage even an Astartes' physiology could not endure. The sergeant's eyes met Ignatius's through cracked lenses, and Galen managed a faint, content smile.
The Emperor protects,
Galen whispered, blood bubbling on his lips. Ignatius felt a rare stab of emotion, pride and deepest sorrow intertwined.
Go with his grace, brother,
the brother captain said softly. Galen exhaled one final time, fingers tightening briefly on Ignatius's gauntlet before falling limp. All around, the battle was winding down. With their leader dead and their demonic boon denied, the remaining World Eaters fell into disarray. Some continued to fight on with frenzied abandon, only to be cut down by the methodical Grey Knights. Others, the few that retained any instinct for self-preservation, broke and fled into the burning night, howling in frustration. Brother Aeon and the last uninjured Grey Knight pursued them with bolter and blade, ensuring none escaped the plaza alive. Each traitor was executed without mercy. Better to grant them death here than let such rabid killers spill more innocent blood elsewhere. Justica Marcus lay on his back amid the carnage, grievously wounded by the chain axe blow. He was alive, barely, his Astartes constitution keeping him clinging to life, but fading fast. Ignatius limped to his side, pain lancing through his own battered body with every step. Kneeling, he gently removed Marcus's helmet. The Justicar's face was ashen, blood seeping from his nose and lips. Marcus rasped faintly, mouthing words unheard. Ignatius understood and managed a tired smile.
Banished. The gate is closed. We have victory, brother.
A weak grin tugged at the corner of Marcus's mouth, and he sighed. With that, Justica Marcus's gaze unfocused, and he went still, joining the Emperor's side. Ignatius bowed his head. 4 of his battle brothers had perished this night. A steep toll, but their duty had been fulfilled. Humanity would never know of their sacrifice. Such was the way of the Grey Knights. In the distance, sirens began to wail, the belated response of what little PDF forces remained, or perhaps inbound Adeptus Arbites flyers. It mattered not. Ignatius knew what must be done now. He voxed Brother Aeon.
Report.
A moment later, Aeon, wounded but standing, approached through the smoke and gloom. All hostiles down or fleeing. No demonic presence remains, he said wearily. Brother Tancred fell containing the Terminators. Severus was lost to the berserkers on the flank. Aeon's tone was heavy, naming the dead. Ignatius closed his eyes a moment at that news. Tancred's life sign had winked out during the melee with the Red Butchers, and Brother Severus must have fallen earlier in the fight. Each loss was a silent wound to the brother captain's spirit. He gave a slow nod, sorrow and respect etched on his face. Titan will remember them, he vowed silently, even if no one else ever can. At the edge of the plaza, a surviving soldier, the young guardsman, still lay where he had crawled, trembling in shock. Ignatius strode over to him, a towering figure silhouetted by the flickering fires. The bloodied, soot-streaked man looked up at this night angel, who had descended to deliver him from a nightmare. His eyes shone with gratitude and confusion. The guardsman gasped in relief, tears mixing with grime on his cheeks. Thank. He never finished the sentence. In a blur of motion, Brother Aeon stepped forward and snapped the man's neck with one swift, merciful twist. The guardsman fell dead before his head hit the ground, his expression still frozen in relief. Ignatius closed his eyes and set his jaw. It was done swiftly, without suffering. No witnesses would remain to speak of what transpired here tonight, of the Grey Knight's presence or the horrors that had unfolded. The Inquisition's will would be kept. It was a necessary sin, one Ignatius and his brothers bore on their souls, so that the knowledge of chaos would not spread further among mankind. Still, it weighed on him. In the hush that followed, Ignatius whispered a benediction for the guardsman's soul, praying that the Emperor would judge the man kindly for the courage he'd shown. Aeon placed a gauntlet on Ignatius's shoulder, both warriors understanding the weight of that grim necessity. Purification squads will arrive within the hour, Aeon said quietly, meaning the Ordo Malleus cleanup teams already en route now that the warp signature had been snuffed out. They would sanitize the site, incinerate remains, and mind-wipe any survivors beyond recovery. The official story for Karthago Prime might become a gas explosion, or a viral plague, or a minor rebellion. Anything but the truth. The truth would be sealed in inquisitorial vaults, known only to a tiny few. Ignatius nodded.
Prepare our fallen for transport to Titan. Their gene seed must be recovered,
he ordered softly. Aeon moved to carry out the somber task, gathering what remained of their slain brothers. Ignatius found himself standing silently amidst the plaza, beside a ruined fountain that now ran red with blood. Breathing in the night air thick with ash and the sickly sweet smell of gore. He was bleeding from multiple wounds. Every muscle in his body ached. Yet he remained on his feet, a lone bastion of silver amid a field of carnage. He thought of Brother Galen, Marcus, Tancred, Severus, how they had given everything to avert the nightmare that nearly broke loose here. None outside the chapter would ever sing of their heroism. Their names and deeds would be recorded only in the secret archives on Titan. Yet that anonymity was itself a badge of the highest honor. The Grey Knights did not fight for glory or accolades. They fought so that humanity could live one more day in ignorant safety. There is no sacrifice too great in the Emperor's service, Ignatius reminded himself, steeling his soul. In the eerie quiet that followed, broken only by distant screams and the crackle of burning buildings, Ignatius's gaze drifted upward. The unnatural scarlet fury in the sky was receding, the warp storm abating with the banishment of the daemon. In its absence, a few pale stars now peeked through the haze above the ruined spires. Dawn was still hours away, but perhaps dawn would indeed come for Karthago Prime. A world grievously wounded, scarred and mourning, but spared annihilation. The World Eater's evil here had been scoured away in blood and fire. Ignatius activated his long-range Vox.
Morris,
He signaled to their strike cruiser in orbit.
mission accomplished. The primary threat is contained.
He paused, a wave of pain from cracked ribs nearly robbing his breath.
We will need retrieval and apothecarian support. Casualties.
He glanced at Brother Aeon, who was lifting the limp form of Justicar Marcus reverently.
Multiple.
Acknowledgement came back over the Vox, crackling. The strike cruiser Tempestus was already dispatching Thunderhawk transports for extraction. They would be gone before any local forces could properly arrive. Signing off, Ignatius limped toward the fallen icon of Khorne that loomed over the plaza. The massive brass symbol lay toppled in the melee. The grotesque idol, still smeared with the gruesome trophies impaled upon it, was face down in the mud. Ignatius planted a boot on it. With effort, he raised his halberd one last time, channeling a spark of psychic flame through the blade. In a swift executioner's strike, he drove the blade down, cleaving the icon in two and igniting it with azure fire. The unholy sigil melted and crumbled to ash, utterly broken. A fitting final act of purification. They met near the plaza's center a short time later. They had retrieved what they could. The gene seed vials from their fallen comrades were secured, and the corpses of the traitors were piled for later incineration. Brother Aeon removed his helmet, revealing a face lined with grief and resolve. Ignatius placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. They exchanged a solemn look. No words were necessary. Both had seen many campaigns, but the loss of brethren never became easier to bear. In that shared understanding, they found a measure of comfort. Together, amid the smoldering ruins, the two warriors began a low, mournful canticle in High Gothic. It was the requiem of martyrs, an ancient grey night dirge for the fallen. Their deep voices rose softly over the devastation. The sonorous chant echoed against crumbling walls as they departed the blood-soaked plaza, making their way toward the extraction point.
In darkness we deliver his light. In sacrifice we forge salvation. None shall know the names of these heroes, save the Emperor on his throne.
They sang, each syllable heavy with reverence. As they left that accursed square, the first faint hints of an ashen morning began to lighten the sky. Sanctum Heredicia's great bells lay shattered and silent in their towers. yet it almost seemed as if an echo of their toll could be heard in the distance, a lament for all the tragedy and appeal for all those saved. A grim victory had been won here, a victory steeped in blood and costly beyond measure, but a victory nonetheless. The Grey Knights had done their duty, and the Imperium would endure one day more because of it. Several weeks later, in the hidden fastness of Titan, a lone Grey Knight knelt in the hallowed Hall of Champions. Clad in a simple robe, Brother Captain Ignatius recited prayers of absolution under his breath. Before him, carved into a slab of the moon's grey rock, were newly engraved names: Galen, Marcus, Tancred, Severus, the names of the brothers who had fallen on Karthago Prime, now added to the chapter's honored roll. Their deeds were inscribed in cipher, never to be known by outsiders, but here, among the Brotherhood, they would be remembered for all time. Ignatius bowed his head and pressed his forehead to the cold stone in a final gesture of respect. Rising slowly to his feet, he whispered a last vow to the departed. From a shadowed alcove at the chamber's edge, Inquisitor Rathbone of the Ordo Malleus observed silently. Rathbone had personally overseen the purge of Karthago Prime's survivors, a grim duty even by Inquisition standards. Entire regiments and countless civilians who had any knowledge of the Chaos incursion were relocated, interrogated, and in most cases mind-wiped or quietly executed to contain the secret. History would remember it only as a minor rebellion put down and an unfortunate Hive City chemical disaster. The price of secrecy was high, but widespread ignorance was the Imperium's best weapon against chaos. Rathbone stepped forward, his long grey coat whispering over the polished floor, and gave the Grey Knight a respectful nod. "Brother Captain, the Conclave has reviewed your after-action report," the Inquisitor said formally. "You and your squad have the Ordo's highest commendation. The summoning was thwarted. The World Eater's warband is shattered." Ignatius's face remained stoic.
"At great cost,"
he replied quietly, glancing back to the memorial stone behind him. Rathbone allowed a rare softening of his severe expression. "Such is the burden we bear in service to the Golden Throne," he said, his tone gentler. The Inquisitor's gaze lingered on the freshly carved names. Their sacrifice will be honored by the few that know. It was as much solace as a grim-hearted Inquisitor could offer. Ignatius inclined his head in gratitude.
"We exist to give our lives so that the Emperor's realm endures,"
he recited, finding strength in that eternal truth. Rathbone gave a curt nod, and with that, the Inquisitor turned in a swirl of midnight robes and strode away down the echoing hall. Now alone in the grand chamber, save for silent statues of heroes long departed, Ignatius approached one marble alcove. Within it stood the carved likeness of a Grey Knight Grand Master, towering in his armor and holding aloft a sword. At the base of the statue was a simple inscription.
"We are the Hammer."
Ignatius reached out and ran his fingertips over the words etched in stone, feeling their weight anew. They, the Grey Knights, were the hammer that struck unrelentingly against the darkness, so that humanity's light would not be extinguished. On Karthago Prime, that hammer had fallen with righteous fury, and though it had shattered in the strike, it had not failed. Eyes closed, Ignatius allowed himself one final recollection. The moment in the plaza, when dawn's first light broke through the drifting smoke. He remembered standing amidst the ruin, exhausted and bloodied yet unbowed, as the sun's rays caught motes of ash in the air like golden dust. In that light, for one fleeting heartbeat, he imagined he felt the Emperor's gaze upon him, not with judgment, but with a father's solemn pride. A benediction, perhaps, for his sons who had given everything to hold back the chaos that would otherwise devour the stars. Brother Captain Ignatius opened his eyes, exhaled slowly, and squared his shoulders. The lament for the fallen was done. Now he would carry on their legacy. There were always more battles on the horizon. A cult uprising on some distant hive world. A demon incursion scratching at reality's veil. A new scheme of the arch-enemy festering in the darkness. The Grey Knights would be there, in the shadows, unyielding and unsung. In the endless war for the soul of mankind, victory was never final, just as sacrifice was never in vain. And so, as the bells of Titan tolled afar for evening prayers, Ignatius departed the Hall of Champions, clad once more in his polished power armor, newly repaired and ritually purified of any taint. He walked into the embarkation hall where his next mission awaited. Around him, other Grey Knights went about their preparations in silence, each one a fortress of faith and iron. Ignatius moved to join them, a humble brother among equals, ready to bring the Emperor's vengeance to whatever hell needed cleansing next. Moments later, engines roared to life, and the vast chamber emptied as the Knights of Titan went forth once more. Behind them, the grand hall fell silent, save for the whisper of names etched in stone and the eternal unyielding prayer. Emperor, give us strength. We are the hammer, your chosen, and in faith we shall prevail. Thus ends the tale of blood and faith. The fires of battle have burned low, yet their embers haunt us still. In this grim darkness, victory came at a cost, paid in blood, faith, and the tatters of hope. What has this saga kindled in your soul, Shardwalker? Take a moment to feel the weight of what you've witnessed, the courage and despair, the sacrifice and salvation. Such stories do not leave us unchanged. I invite you to reflect on it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us gather in the aftermath and find meaning amid the ashes of this tale. If this story has struck true, do the Emperor's work and honor this archive with a like. Enlist in our crusade by subscribing and strike the bell of notification so you are first to know when the next grim chronicle arises. Rally your fellow Shardwalkers by sharing this video, that our brotherhood may grow. Know that your support keeps the torch of our storytelling ablaze. If you'd like to strengthen our war effort, you'll find the sacred links in the archives below. Partake in the Adeptus brew of G Fuel. Remember code SHARDS for a blessed 20% off. Or offer a tribute via Ko-Fi to sustain these tales. There our supporters will also find the materials of our latest tales. And as always, support is appreciated, not mandated. Your presence alone fortifies us. We also raise high the banner of Stack Up, a noble cause in our own world that aids warriors fighting battles beyond our fiction. Join us in supporting those veterans. See the link in the archives, if it is within your possibilities. Until the next transmission, farewell, Shardwalker. Walk ever in the Emperor's light, and steel your soul anew, for the war without end continues. The Emperor protects.